I'm Chris Vestal, and this is DCSLA Radio. The following is the audio from our SLA 2011 Conference Wrap Up event. For more information about DCSLA and how you can get involved with the chapter, visit our website at dc.sla.org.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. My name is Marianne Giltrude. I'd like to welcome you here to Catholic University for our DCSLA and CUA SLA joint annual conference wrap-up. We are joined today with the students of Catholic University of their SLA group, which is headed by our own Dave Shoemaker here.
I'm just the advisor.
He's the advisor.
It's headed by Helen Horn-Mitchum.
Helen, why don't you guys come up here so we can meet you?
Are they looking for jobs?
Yeah.
And you couldn't find better candidates anywhere.
Did everybody go away?
Lisa's dumping the pizza box.
Oh, okay. So, the student group has been helping us prepare the program. They've been posting information to the listserv and engaging students. And Lisa and Helen and, I'm sorry, what's the gentleman's name at the door? Dave. Who were up there at registration. We're all part of the student group that have been helping us, and hopefully they'll be able to come up. Do you want to say a few words?
No, this has been a really great experience. It's been education. Oh, yeah.
We can't hear you very well.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a very great experience for our student group, getting some event planning experience, getting to learn more about DCSLA. We are a division of DCSLA, and we unfortunately don't get to connect with the larger group as much. And that's something we want to rectify, and it's been very exciting putting this together with Marianne. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, yay! Okay, so tonight we have a panel of 6 speakers, and each of them, some of them were actually presenters at the conference, and others are just doing takeaways, but most of our speakers were actually presenters. So we have a unique opportunity to hear speakers who were at the conference doing their presentations, and then other individuals with their takeaways from the conference. So we're going to start off with our own Dave Shoemaker, and please feel free, is that okay to ask questions when you're done?
However you want to do. I got 8 minutes. So, I think it's, might be better to hold just so everybody gets to present, and then people may have questions about the whole thing. I don't know.
Does that sound good?
Up to you.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, so we're going to start off with Dave Shoemaker. I'm going to be real quick. He's, most of you probably know Dave, who's an adjunct, he's a clinical professor here at Catholic University. He's been very active in SLA. His forte is embedded librarianship, and he's spoken in many arenas, nationally and internationally, so we're welcoming Dave here to bring his wisdom to the ground.
Thanks. Okay. All right, well, Marianne told me 8 minutes. Marianne gives me an order, I follow it.
So I'm in trouble now.
Hopefully we're going to be able to launch PowerPoint here. It's not that critical, really, but we'll see what happens. So I hope it's going to be okay. I tend to have developed pretty good volume over the years of teaching. I want to start by asking, how many of you have read my blog in the last month or so? Good. No, you have lots of company. You have 6,999,999,000 people that also have not read my blog. And the reason I ask is that because what I put it in show mode here. Oh, yes. Okay. Trying to do something helpful here. Okay. So the reason I ask is because the comments I'm about to give you are actually drawn from something I posted right after the conference. So if you'd read the blog, it would be repetitious, and you might want to leave the room. Anyway, I'm getting to the point where I tend to process everything I read or hear against an embedded librarianship filter. And how does it relate to embedded librarianship? And that's a bit scary for me. But it did seem to me that the keynote speakers at the SLA conference, while they certainly weren't addressing embedded librarianship directly, made a lot of points that align well with my interest in that topic. So take Tom Friedman, the opening keynote speaker. Friedman continues to develop his world is flat theme of globalization. And among many other points, I won't try and repeat them all, he emphasized the importance of imagination and creativity in adding value. And in this, he's echoing Daniel Pink, whom he cited. Now, one way to generate creative ideas, he noted, is to apply concepts from one domain to a different domain. Well, I think that's one of the things that embedded librarians help groups to do. So take their knowledge of information and apply it within the domain of the information users that they work with. So it's the synthesis that's achieved through the collaboration that adds value to the organization and makes the librarians non-routine, unique contributors, well-positioned in Friedman's terms. Now, the day after Friedman spoke, the same point was approached from a different angle by KM expert Lawrence Prusak. Prusak's central thesis, which is ironic for somebody known for his expertise in knowledge management, was that knowledge actually isn't as important as judgment. So Prusak proceeded to discuss factors that lead to good judgment in organizations. Among them, the application of multiple forms of knowledge, the application of relevant cognitive diversity, and the democratization of knowledge. Again, filtered through my embedded librarianship filter, these are all ways in which the inclusion of librarians in problem-solving teams and in organizational processes adds strength and capability. Traditionally, organizations haven't optimized the value of librarians because they've kept us in a box called the library. But librarians bring different knowledge, different perceptual frames, different problem-solving approaches into organizational teams. And as we librarians integrate into the organization more fully or embed ourselves, we're able to apply what we know and how we think in new ways. The closing keynote speaker was James Kane, whose theme was loyalty, what it is and how to engender it. Briefly, Kane asserts that loyalty is created out of trust, shared purpose, and a sense of belonging. Without going into too much detail, I'd say these attributes provide a good description of the relationship of a successful embedded librarian with the information user group. There's trust in one another's capability and one another's commitment, a shared commitment to the purpose of the team, and a network of strong social relationships that cement the business relationship. So those were the keynoters, and that's my perception of how they really reinforced the theme of embedded librarianship, even though they weren't addressing it directly. And then there was the program centerpiece for embedded librarians, which was a panel organized by the Military Librarians Division. And it was very well attended. They gave us a room that sat 60, and we could have used a room that sat 150. So people were on the floor, up in the front, back in the back, out the door. It featured Michael Moore, not that Michael Moore, Michael Moore of the MITRE Corporation, who spoke about his embedded work for the corporation's Systems Engineering Practice Office, or SEPO, and also Rachel Kincaid, who described her approach to embedded information literacy instruction at the U.S. Marine Corps Research Library. Michael first wrote about his work, and here's the link or the citation for those of you who are interested, in Information Outlook in 2006, so he's been at this a while. He emphasized the following themes: connections, both connections between him and his SEPO colleagues, and also his ability to help the SEPO organization connect with the rest of the MITRE organization. Energy, identifying what are the passions, issues, and needs of the organization. So as an embedded librarian, where's the passion of the group that I'm embedded with? Let me figure out how I can contribute to advancing that passion. And then finally, communication, and simply the criticality of multiple modes and purposes of communication to foster a strong embedded role. Rachel gave a really vivid example of customizing information literacy instruction to her audience, which is Marine Corps officers. And this is a citation to an earlier version of her presentation that was given last December at the Military Librarians Group. So, and then I came along, actually I guess I went first, but however it went, I made some comments about key elements of embedded librarianship, but I think the thing that really made the panel was the real on-the-ground experiences of Michael and Rachel. So, to wrap it up, am I still good on time? To wrap it up, viewed from my embedded librarianship perspective, the SLA conference had lots of support and encouragement for embedded librarianship. I thought it was strong on substance in many ways, including the presentations of these particular speakers, and I was really encouraged by the alignment that I see between embedded librarianship and the themes especially of our keynoters. So, thank you very much.
Okay. So our next presenter is going to be Bruce Rosenstein, and Bruce is also one of our CUA specials. Bruce is an adjunct instructor here at Catholic. He teaches special libraries and information centers. He's also the author of Living in More Than One World. Let me make sure I mean How Peter Drucker's Wisdom Can Inspire and Transform Your Life, based on his experience of interviewing Peter Drucker throughout his career at USA Today. So, the microphone back down here. Okay.
Okay, Marianne, thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for being here. I'll say just a quick thing about the book that Marianne mentioned. I wrote in 2 different guest posts for the Government Info Pro blog about how this book, which was published in 2009 by a publisher in San Francisco called Barrett Kohler, that the roots of this book actually go back 25 years to Upstairs in Maris 213. I've linked to that on my website. If you go to Government Info Pro, you can read about it, and I won't go into chapter and verse about it. But I hope that this is inspirational to all of you, because it shows that a project like this, and we're talking about a very long period of time, can start in a place like library school. And what happened with the conference was kind of a harmonic convergence, because the theme of the conference was the future, and and where SLA members fit into that future. And chapter 3 of my book is creating your future. And Hope Tillman, who was president of SLA at one point, who became a friend and a real supporter of mine, Hope contacted me maybe a year ago and said, this is a theme. Your book would fit in perfectly with it. Can you do a presentation? So, and then on the day, she arranged it for it to be one of the spotlight presentations, which is but still, it was the last day. It was Wednesday. So I kept thinking the whole time, because I would see all these people with their luggage carts going out the door on Monday and Tuesday. I felt like nobody's going to show up. Everybody's going to be out of town Wednesday morning. But I walked in a half hour early to do the setup because we also showed my video. And there were a lot of people there. I was really shocked. So I knew I had to really raise my game. So we had this great, and the other point about that is that Drucker himself, and Drucker died in 2005 at the age of 95. Drucker himself was the keynote speaker at SLA in Los Angeles in 2002. And a story that I wrote about it, I interviewed him for USA Today at that point, or the night before he gave his keynote, and you can also see that on my website. And so I thought it was just a very neat way that the circle kind of came around. But as I said, he's no longer with us. My book is not, the traditional things on Drucker are like, how to run your business, how to run your organization. Mine, I call it, only half-jokingly, the self-help book that he himself never wrote, and the next best thing to being mentored by him. So he felt, he was this very practical guy, and there's a great quote in the book. Actually, it's the same quote. It's from the redone version, which I reviewed for USA Today in the 21 years that I worked there. But the original book, this is the shortened version, which is something like 600 pages. The original book was 839 pages, and that was what was assigned, not the whole book, but assigned in the summer course. We're talking exactly 25 years ago. So he said the purpose of the work on making the future is not to decide what should be done tomorrow, but what should be done today to have it tomorrow. So always bringing it back to what are you going to do now? He also had this great phrase that he got a lot of mileage on. He wrote articles about it. He put it in various books, and I'm not going to read you the full quote, but it's the idea of the future that's already happened. What, because of what's going on now, major events, major trends that are going to affect things in the future, what are those things, and how is it going to affect you personally? So that's why he said it's to identify and prepare for the future that has already happened. He just had these great turns of phrases. There's just so many of them. I was very privileged to have written about him a lot for USA Today, also for Information Outlook. I did a column for Information Outlook in the months leading up to his keynote in 2002, and I interviewed him both for the book, and I interviewed him before that for USA Today. So I was very, very privileged. As I pointed out after I showed the video at the conference, I said, if I never sell one more book, if I never get one more speaking engagement, no one can ever take away this, this world-famous guy. No one can ever take that away from me, what happened. As you see, I'm very on message. I have the Drucker School shirt. It's technically the Peter F. Drucker and Masatoshi Ito Graduate School of Management at Claremont Graduate University. But anyway, so I'm very on message about this. One thing that I did the major thing that to kind of, so people couldn't say, well, what are you doing differently that even if you've written a lot about Drucker in the past, for doing a book, there's been other books about Drucker. He wrote 40 books himself. What are you doing that's different? So what I did was I put a framework around Drucker in the individual, and it was very, very hard work to do this. Hard, mental labor that took quite some time, but I finally did it. I finally came up with the right sort of framework, and I say that because my publisher was not going to give me a contract otherwise if I did not get that framework around it. So I know I had the right framework because she said, my editor said, okay, now you've finally done it. So part of this was, besides putting around the intellectual framework, was coming up with something called the total life list that you kind of work on through the book. And it's very future-oriented, which is, I think, another reason why Hope liked what I did and felt it would be good for the conference. So there's the total life list, and the idea is that you work on it throughout the book, and then at the end of the book, you've either finished it or you kind of know what you want to work on. But in each category of life, you are asked to name people within that category, things within that category, now and in the future. And one of the things that I shared at SLA that is not in the book was taking those 14 categories and separated them into things that would involve people, things that would involve your professional life, and things that involve your personal life. And if anyone wants to, if you want to get that list, just email me. I'm rosensteinbruce@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to email the list to you. And I'll email it to you actually in that form, which is, as I said, a little bit different from the book. Just a couple other real quick things before we run out of time. He was very, very big on this idea of the parallel career. He wrote about this. It's not just something he told me. It was something that he just kind of hammered on for years. And I really took that to heart. Now, I worked at USA Today for 21 years. I mean, anybody joining USA Today or any other newspaper right now, there is no way in the world that 21 years from now they're still going to be working there. They're just not. But anyway, during that time, at some point, I thought, this is really wonderful. I really enjoy doing this, but I have broader ambitions in this parallel career. I read about the parallel career. It was actually before I'd met Drucker for the first time or talked to him for the first time. And I decided I was getting interested in teaching. And this was also, it was in the summer. It was the summer of 1995. And I contacted Dr. Preer. Does anyone know Dr. Preer, who was the associate dean here at one point and a professor, and was a real mentor to me? And I called her up and said, I'm interested in teaching. Do you have any ideas, any tips, any pointers? And actually, I came in and met with her in her office, and she said, it was in early June of 1995. And she said, okay, on July 11th, you can do a guest lecture in my class about your work as a librarian at USA Today, and then that'll kind of help get your feet wet. And that went really well. One thing led to another, and an opening came up in September to teach special libraries, because Guy St. Clair, who spoke at the conference and who I saw there, Guy moved from Washington to New York. It was wonderful. So I was his loss, my gain, and I was able to get the job. But that's where I got that idea, the idea of the parallel career that led me into teaching. So I'll be happy to answer questions later on. If you have questions afterwards by email, please contact me. And thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Amy Babcock Ellis, and if you're on any listserv, you probably see her name all the time. So she's a librarian at Drug Enforcement Administration. She's from the University of Maryland, recent graduate. She's Fackler? Yeah, Rising Star. So all these little names come after Amy. So Amy's going to talk today about networking in the 21st century, and let's welcome Amy to Catholic U.
I have to say, though, I was really honored to be able to go to your session,
Thank
Bruce.
you.
I got a lot out of it, and I was very glad that I stayed till Wednesday for it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So I think people know about the benefits of networking, about how it helps solve problems, it enhances your communication skills. And if you go into librarianship because you think you're not going to have to deal with people, I think you're going to have to rethink your career path. Another reason that they gave was it just helps you stay up to date on issues. But one of the things they talked about was that it should be a we versus me approach, that it's not just a one-way street. It's something that's a mutually beneficial relationship that you have to, before you maybe even start, you should think about what can you offer to other people, not just what do I want out of a relationship. So I thought that was really interesting because it was a lot of people at the event. It was hosted by the Career Connections, and a lot of people there were definitely interested in finding a new career. And
So I think changing your perspective and figuring out, how you can help other people too, and don't think just because you're still in school or something you don't have anything to offer. Because you do. And then think about it as a long-term process. It's not something short-term, just not after you find a job, you just stop talking to people. No, you want to keep up those connections. So the presenter, Alan Deback, he was saying that around quarterly he sets these reminders to himself to email certain people in his network to see how they're doing, if they need anything, let him know how he's doing, and just keep in contact, even if, you're not exactly on the market and you just want to, hopefully your network are like your friends, hopefully. They say with networking you should try to think of who you want on your A-team. So, and develop those people that, if you have the chance to be able to work with these people, these are the ones that you want to be working with because you're going to hit it out of the ballpark. He also talked about accepting rejection and not taking it personally. The person could just be having a bad day. Maybe they missed their train to get to the conference or something. That, just move on and kind of, set goals for yourself for that day. Okay, maybe I'm going to try to talk to 2 or 3 new people today and just set those goals and work on meeting them. Don't focus on, oh, God, this person doesn't like me because, my hair's too curly or something. He just said, don't take it personally, move on. There's many more people out there to meet. Then we talked about networking at a conference, because a lot of people were saying, well, there's thousands of people at this conference. Where do you start? How do you start? So he was talking about that you should prepare ahead of time and prepare that you're going to devote a certain amount of time to meeting people. He also talked about the different ways. So Alumni Association, if your Alumni Association is having any events at the conference, that you could go to those and meet people that you already have something in common with, so you have something to talk about. Some conferences, the chemistry division offered a conference buddy program, so they would pair you up with someone who's already been to the conference. That's a good way to at least know that you're meeting one new person at least, and then usually they'll introduce you to people in their network, so it kind of spreads. They talked about how easy it could be to meet people in the hotel lobby or on the airport waiting for the train, because you can kind of spot librarians. So even I was coming here and I was lost and I saw someone else and she goes, oh, you look like a librarian, So we knew we were heading in the right direction because we were both going there. And networking can start, you don't have to start with, oh, where do you work? What do you do? You can start with, hey, I like your hair, or just other things besides what you do, because your job doesn't always define you, and there's more to you that you can talk about than just, what you do from 9 to 5. They also talked about the vendor expos. Elsevier had the dance party and the desserts, and those are good ways to meet people. They said, don't go in a huge pack, okay? It's overwhelming. People aren't going to remember you if there's like 5 of you. You don't stand out. So if you go with just 1 or 2 people and you look for the other people who look just as awkward or nervous or whatever in the room, they said, that you'll at least have something in common with them, because you both want someone to talk to. You don't want to just stand there and, eat and get tons of drinks. And so they also said waiting in line. I don't know. I was at ALA and there was only 1 Starbucks in the whole convention center, so that line was very long, and you spent a lot of time talking to people in line. So that's another thing. They said also come up to the speakers afterwards and talk to them. They're usually very happy to. I know the speaker of this program, he was saying, please email me. I have a handout here that he passed out, your 2-minute commercial, and he was saying, please email me with your 2-minute commercial, because the important thing is to practice this, to refine it, to say it out loud. Don't just think of it in your head. So he really encouraged us to get in contact with people. I was also very happy to see that you listed your contact information and wanted people to get in touch with you. So the speakers do want to hear from you. And some people at the conference were meeting people that they follow on social networks. So, meeting them for the first time, they follow them on Twitter and they want to see what they look like. And people had mentioned, you can put your Twitter handle on your name tag so people can follow what you're saying at the conference. Then he talked about this refrigerator exercise. If you're thinking, oh my God, I don't know anyone, I don't have a network, what he said was to put a blank piece of paper on your refrigerator, and you walk to your refrigerator about 16 times a day. So every time you walk there, just think of one person that you know or two people that you know. Doesn't matter how you know them, just write their name on that piece of paper and try that for about 6 weeks or a couple weeks until you've gotten pages, of people that you know. And then you go through and you categorize them. Okay, this is the A team, this is the B team, this is the C team. And think about how you can work your relationships with these people. So then you see, okay, look at all these resources that I have. It's not, I don't have just my friends. These are people that I know that, we can help each other. So it was a good exercise to see other ways that you can think of people that you know that might help you. So the additional thing was the elevator speech, and he was saying that you might use this at an interview when one of the first questions they ask you, so tell me about yourself. And so he said this is the perfect time to use your elevator speech. He was saying that it's not enough just to write it down and to think about it in your head. You have to practice it out loud with people. You can't, practice it with anyone, basically. Get as much experience as you can saying it, because that will really help. You want to feel comfortable, you want to feel confident when you're talking about this. You want to show that you're passionate about what you do. The handout has a lot of things about not just talking about the tasks that you do, but the results that you make that you produce in your job. And then we started talking about things that you could put on your business card for 21st century, like LinkedIn, your blog, different things that you want people to see, unless your blog's about something totally unrelated to library science. But he also talked about the online etiquette. There's been some articles about how to network through LinkedIn. So he was talking about, you can send them an email, I see you know these people, and I'm interested in learning more about your company. So he talked about informational interviews that you could try doing through LinkedIn online. So it was a very busy session, but it was well worth it, I thought.
Thank you. Our next presenter. Okay, Chris Vestal. He's a supervisory patent researcher at ARSC Management. He's DCSLA communication director. He also does the DCSLA radio and a lot of media with DCSLA. So, Chris.
Actually going to be just a little closer. So I was on part of a panel discussion that was talking about breathing life into your newsletter and online presence. And Stuart Hale, the publications editor for SLA, started us off. And what he kind of talked about was looking at your publication and asking yourself the, 4 basic journalistic questions, because Stuart is an editor. He doesn't come from a library background. So when he took over Information Outlook, he kind of asked himself, what is this supposed to be? And his answer to that was, it's an educational tool, primarily. So most of the stuff that's going to fit in there is going to be stuff to educate our membership. He talked about who your audience is. It's okay to have multiple audiences, but if you have more than 2 or 3 audiences, you probably are overdoing it, and you're going to want to rethink things. The why you're publishing your newsletter, your publication kind of goes into what it is. It also goes into what format that is being published in and how often it's being published. And then an interesting thing he said was talking about the where. Where is your publication likely to be read? And that's becoming more and more relevant with people reading material on their mobile devices, like their iPad or their iPhones, or on the go. You're a lot more likely to read a short, paragraph-long thing if you're on the go versus a really long, drawn-out 1,000-word article about the profession if you were sitting at home reading a paper copy. So just questions to ask yourself like that to keep in mind. Virginia Mattingly, talked about her experience migrating the electronic PDF format of the Legal Division's newsletter over into the new online WordPress platform that SLA is encouraging all the units to move over to, and her experiences with that. So what they essentially did is they created a main homepage that people know to go to the newsletter, and then every article or column or blip gets its own little separate child page, and it changes quarterly, and they archive it. And for people that really still want everything collected into one document PDF, they've also included a link that you can click on, and it will compile all the HTML into one PDF document, and you can print it off. It doesn't have the same sort of formatting that chapter notes in its PDF format had, but it's really just meant for those people that don't want to access it primarily online or mobilely. And then Anne kind of talked about, she was a first-time newsletter editor, her first year as a newsletter editor, talking about her experiences and the lessons that she learned. And the number one takeaway I took from her was being a publications editor or any kind of marketing editor is not a passive experience at all. It's a very involving experience, and you constantly have to ask yourself, why am I doing this, as far as why am I doing this specific style or whatever, and keep reevaluating your audience. What I talked about was using kind of what we did last year with chapter notes as a case study of getting to know your audience. What we did last year, I was fairly typical of newsletter editors in SLA, where we're a staff of one and we've never done it before and we have no idea what we're doing. So I brainstormed with the former editor, and I brainstormed with James King, who was the president that year, and we decided that we wanted to do a survey of the members to see what they wanted chapter notes to be. And I love that idea because I had no idea what to put up there, and hopefully it would get me more material. So, and some of you might have responded to the survey. We advertised it for a couple of weeks last year. We had over 118 people respond, which at the time was just over 10% of our membership. So we felt pretty comfortable with the sample size that we had. And what we found was, one of the things was kind of a no-brainer. People wanted one place where they could go to see all of the upcoming chapter events. So we decided to incorporate that into new issues. People also wanted articles on professional development, which I wouldn't have thought of myself as part of a newsletter, and I actually didn't have that listed on the questionnaire. That was one of the open-ended answers people kept writing in, was they wanted career advice and professional development advice. And I felt like I got some of the strongest feedback from people from those open-ended questions rather than the multiple-choice ones that we asked. So we took everything that people said and we made a number of changes. We decided to do reoccurring columns based on a specific theme. That way it would be predictable to people. And also so I would have guaranteed material for each issue, and I would be happy. So one of the reoccurring features we had was just our upcoming chapter events. And one of the writing comments people had said is they wanted clearer pictures of what was going on in the chapter. So we kind of formatted after, your typical Washingtonian magazine, where members submitted photos get interspersed between the upcoming events, little blurb. We also added a library-related events section in there where we did the same thing. We added a column that was kind of ahead of its time since this year's theme is future ready. The column at the time was the way forward, and it was about things you could do in your career to position yourself for the future. We had a career column, which actually Amy and James both here wrote for. And some of the material they generated for that column was just so good it actually made its way into SLA's Future Ready Toolkit, which if you guys haven't checked out already, I encourage you to because it's really good. There's my plug for that. We had about 3 issues, so half the year we did a series on librarians taking a leadership role in their organization, and it was called Taking the Reins, and that was pretty popular. So after all these changes, one of the other changes that we made was based on the write-in feedback. People said that they weren't really sure when each issue was coming out. The only way they knew is if they checked the homepage every day, and I certainly was going to check the homepage every day if I was a reader, so I couldn't expect them to. So we decided to really market each issue a little bit more. So we posted to the listserv that each issue is available, and then we also gave a preview of each story. I gave a direct link to the issue. That way they didn't have to go directly to the website. And I'm like, and you're going to want to read this issue because we have networking and conferences and career column this year. We have an interview with a career coach in the way forward this year. We're talking about librarians and their digitization projects in this issue. So you don't want to miss it. And after all these changes, we managed to get statistics for the last issue of Chapter Notes in 2009, and we compared it to the first few issues of 2010, and we had about a 400% increase in clicks. Yeah, that was nice. We didn't generate a large profit because ad revenue had been down overall, and it was still down last year, but there were 2 issues that actually made a profit for the chapter. And we went from, being a staff of 1 to we have about 6 or 7 people that are involved, maybe even 8 people that are involved in Chapter Notes this year. So it became less of a, will you please work on Chapter Notes, to something that people in the chapter really wanted to be a part of and be involved with. And we just got all that by asking our members what they wanted and trying to tailor to that. I was talking about DCSLA, but the legal division migrated their PDF format newsletter into a WordPress format, and that was part of the presentation too, but that was someone else presenting that. That's all for me.
I'm actually going to present. So, sorry. I'll just say. Okay. My name is Marianne Giltrude. I work at Catholic University. I'm also a SLIS alum, and I'm an adjunct professor. I teach reference here at Catholic. And actually, I'm involved on the SLIS the Catholic University of America Alumni Board, and we're doing this big project, Centennial Celebration, 100 Years in Library Education. And I'm the steering committee head for that, so a lot of things going on in that respect. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, and it's interesting because some of the things that I'm going to talk about are some of the things that other people have talked about, but I kind of come to librarianship with kind of a big picture kind of idea and background. So I see things in a little different way, and that's just who I am and how I do things. But I too wanted to talk about Thomas Friedman because when I was in library school, Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat was actually required reading here at Catholic. At a time when business schools were actually, using that as a Bible, and they were debating on what that was about. So it was really great for me to be there and to actually hear him present. And it was interesting also to see how his work had kind of evolved from The World is Flat and seeing how things have kind of gone along in the world and how he's really kind of been on top of things in many ways. And he really talks about disruptors, and that's kind of what this whole idea of The World is Flat is about, different things that have impacted us in our world and how that translates to us in the library profession. And and some things we don't think about so much is even like weather is actually a disruptor. Look at what's happened with all the different hurricanes and tsunamis and different things, and how that's impacted our preservation and how we offer services and how we try to offer service during those times. He also talked about Steve Jobs and on YouTube, where he made a presentation in 2005. He was the commencement speaker at Stanford and talked about where he was now was not where he started out, kind of almost like Bruce is saying, when he was like a young college student who never finished college, and how his life in the very beginning, he learned how to calligraphy. That was kind of one of the things that he really liked, and that calligraphy informed how Apple created their desktop and how they made really interesting fonts and how that really made his product take off. So making these really unusual connections that impact us in ways that we don't always think about and don't really know about, but then when we come full circle, we can go, oh, yeah, that's really where that happened, and that's why I got here, and that's who I am today. So little things like that make an interesting kind of piece of ourselves. And I also want to talk about the cultural diversity, which I think Thomas Friedman talked about and Dave also mentioned. This kind of the idea that if you have someone who comes from a different lens in their culture, they can understand what's happening better than someone who's from a different piece of that culture. And I don't know if any of you have ever kind of been an outsider in different cultures. I certainly have. My former husband was Chinese, and so his family I would be in events, family get-togethers where they were speaking Chinese, and I'm sitting there and I'm speaking English, and I really didn't understand what was going on. So that's kind of, I've had that experience, and actually my mother-in-law didn't speak English, so she did Chinglish. She's kind of little English. She motioned to me, and we communicated. So those are ways that that's a whole different kind of perspective when you're dealing with people, is trying to understand not just from our frame of reference of who we are, but trying to understand people from where they are. And as the world becomes flatter and broader and you have people from all different walks of life working together, it's good to kind of have that awareness. Also, Lawrence Prusak, I was really taken by him. He was also a big presenter, but I was really taken by him. I've never heard him speak before. But one of the things that kind of stood out for me was talking about like the Lehman Brothers when they were going down, kind of the idea that when we're in groups, we tend to have groupthink. And so, like the emperor has no clothes, where no one's going to say, everybody knew that they were heading off the edge, but nobody would say anything. And then they sold all the bad stuff to other people who weren't even aware. And so that, it kind of had this effect that impacted the whole economic structure, because no one would say anything, but they all knew that it was really bad, and they sold bad things to other people, and then they made a lot of money off of it anyway. So those are things that I think we, in our profession, dealing with information and people in all different areas, need to just kind of be aware of in our lives. And one thing Larry talked about, which I've heard in many ways in different areas, he talked about ground truth. And that's kind of the idea that people that are in the trenches really know what's going on. So if you work in a library, the people that work at the circulation desk and work at the reference desk in a kind of a traditional library, they know what's happening because they deal with the clients every day, patrons, whatever you want to call them. They know what's going on. Just to share this experience, when I was on the reference desk, one of the first times I was down there was a woman at the circ desk, and they were really close together down at Mullen, and this woman was talking and at the circ desk, and all of a sudden her voice started getting louder and louder. And so something was escalating, and I knew something was going on, and a few minutes later she comes over and she goes, "I don't know you, you're new." She goes, "I'm a problem patron." And yes, she was. But over time, because I worked actually reference and access services, if she came to the students were afraid of her. And so I'd have to go in and talk. They would had a hard time dealing with her, so I'd have to go and kind of, smooth it over, because she was very difficult. She was brilliant, but difficult. So it's kind of like that. They knew the people, who's on my watch, who comes in. And that's, I think, a skill that we, as library and information professionals, I think we have, because we deal with people every day. And to kind of be able to use that in our organization and show it as a strength, to be able to articulate to them who are our users and how we can meet them and their needs, and kind of be creative in adding value as we go forward. And then Bruce. I actually took Bruce's class when I was here at SLIS, and in 2006. And I think that was the first time when SLA was in Baltimore, and part of our class was going to the conference. So we had weekly classes, but we also participated in the conference. And so I think I heard you present at that time. What was your very first time when you had the DVD, which was very kind of a new, kind of a very initial kind of starting phase on that. And one of the things that I still remember today about his class was that we met with all these incredible people, Stephen Abrams, Guy Sinclair, I mean, all the people in SLA, he just pulled them into a room and we sat down and talked with them. We just went around tables and talked. So, I mean, having people like that in SLA that are able to mentor you and be able to bring so many things to us, I think is a great blessing and a treat that we all have that opportunity. But, in Bruce's book, I mean, what his book talks about, he kind of reflected in our class. Because I remember you always talked about networking at the conferences. Make sure you talk to people. And a lot of things that actually, Amy, you talked about, Bruce was talking to us about when we were in class. Make sure you get to know one other, kind of go outside your comfort zone. Have that emotional intelligence, know how to get together with people, sit and talk, chat. And I think the one thing that I think comes out of Bruce's books is the whole kind of idea of self-management. Who are we? Where do we want to go, and how do we want to get there? And I think your book really speaks to that. So, anyway, that's all I have for today. And last but not least, yay, we have Mary Talley, who's the president of DCSLA and a consultant in her own right. And she gave a continuing ed presentation at SLA on Saturday, I guess it was. Yep. And strategic Sunday. So she's going to talk about that with us here today. Thank you.
Well, I think you might be embedded out by the end of this program because I'm going to give you a crash course on a strategic approach to embedded services, embedded programs, because that was the program that I taught at SLA with Karen Huffman. And the purpose of the course was to show our participants how to use a strategic plan to implement an embedded program. And the course itself the course structure paralleled a strategic planning process. We defined embedded librarianship. We talked about what made one successful, and we also talked about what they needed to do to become successful. And then we took them step by step through the process of creating the embedded plan. So, why did we try to do two things at once? And it was rather ambitious to also tackle strategic planning as well as tackle embedded librarianship. When you introduce an embedded program or an embedded role in an organization, you're really introducing an innovation, or you're introducing a major change, because what you're doing is you're changing the role of the information professional, and you're changing how the information center operates. And when you introduce an innovation, or when you introduce a major change, if you want it to stick, if you want it to be long-term, you're going to need buy-in from management. You're going to need buy-in from your information center staff if you're the director doing it. And to get buy-in, you need to make sure that your program, whatever it is, but if it's an embedded program, is aligned with the structure, the organization's goals, its strategies, and its priorities. And that's what strategic planning does. So there are basically two ways that you can introduce an innovation or a change. And we explained briefly to our participants these three ways. First is you can do it by stealth. You can do it through organic growth, and you can do it through strategy. When Dave and I did our research, we thought we were going to find that most of the programs were initiated by the information center, the directors, and that they really were the brainchild of the information staff, the information center. And that proved not to be true. More of them were actually set up by either stealth or through organic growth. And our concern is that they don't last as long. They may not have the results that you want. It's imperative now that, and I'm going to go back to Thomas Friedman, which was not part of our CE course, but I was also struck by the same things that Dave was, and I also see many things through the same embedded filter. He had a column in today's New York Times, and it was on the new turbulent world that we live in, and it was on the need for those who are coming through graduate school now, and even those of us who are mid-career, to create our own positions. That we're going to have to use creativity, yes, and curiosity, yes. Also, big factors in being embedded, and that we're going to have to be able to redefine ourselves, to define and redefine ourselves. And creating an embedded role is doing that. It's redefining ourselves. And in order to do that, we need to be able to do it. We need to initiate it. We need to take control ourselves. And using the strategic plan is one way. So if you do it by stealth, it's kind of going in the back door. And these are programs that are set up by usually an entrepreneurial individual, somebody with a high degree of curiosity, who crosses the boundaries, who goes out of the library and works with the user groups in a different way and provides products in a different way. But what it often happens is that they go around the information center management, the director. They're not always supported. In fact, frequently are not supported by the information center, and there's no reach back. These are wildly popular programs, whether they're created by stealth or organically. Users love them, and the more the information professional is capable of doing, the more work they are given, to the point where we've seen a lot of burnout. And without any reach back, without any way to go back and say, I've got too much work, people sometimes leave, but it puts a stressor on the information professional. If the organic growth, which is probably most of the programs, is one in which is also it's more reactive. It's usually started by the user group. An information professional gains some specialization in the field her users are working in. They come to her. She gains more, or he gains more specialization. They give them more and more work, and slowly but surely they might begin to move over into an embedded role. Now, this can be supported by an information center. It can grow into a strategically initiated or part of a strategic program, but it may not be supported. And there's also the issue of reach back, which is an enduring problem. Then there's the strategic. And strategic goes in the front door. If you're creating a program strategically, you're creating a program from the information center, initiating it, and they're usually in a partnership or an alliance with management, which is a much stronger position to be in. The programs that are started from a strategic perspective have clear, demonstrable goals that are generally in alignment with the organization's strategic goals. In a strategic initiative, the information center management knows what the organization's goals are, so they can structure it that way. They have management buy-in. And the information center staff also have buy-in, or they've created a buy-in from them. And it increases the impact of the information center in the organization. So those were the primary reasons we gave for doing the strategic plan. The program itself was framed as a journey, as strategic planning can be. And it was divided into 5 sections where we asked the questions, besides the introduction, where are you going? What is your destination? And we actually, I'm going to back up a minute. We made it a very participatory program. So we had our participants involved from the very beginning. We started with a survey so that we would know where they stood. And we were surprised that so many of the people, we had 18 people in the class, and the majority of them were fairly far along, or at least partway along in an embedded program. So we tailored the class based on what we found out from the survey. We used the survey to we wanted to build relationships, because building relationships is a cornerstone of any embedded program. So we used the survey not only to help tailor our course, but we also used it, and I'll give you, we showed the results online so that the participants would get to know each other, and we introduced them using the survey. And I don't have slides, but I have my survey. And we did a lot of online things as well, so that they could participate. Okay, so the first part was where are you going and what is your destination, which is the beginning of your a strategic plan. We asked attendees what they wanted out of the course, what they wanted from an embedded program, and we created a mind map from it. We also explored the definition of embedded librarianship, and we already knew in a strategic planning process you might not start with where are you going, your destination. You might start with your purpose first, but everybody was there for the embedded librarian purpose. So we wanted to know what they wanted out of the course, and we wanted to make sure at the end of the course that they got what they wanted. So we came back to that at the end. We asked them for their definitions, and we asked them what it would look like in their organization. We wanted them to know we wanted to ask them what it would look like in their organization once it was implemented. What was their concept of it? And we came back again at the end of the program to see if that had changed. It had changed, actually, for many of them. The next question we asked is, why are you going? What's your purpose? What do you want to achieve? And we wanted them to relate this back to their own issues in their organization, the goals and purposes in their organization. And we had them do a participatory exercise on that. We wanted them to answer the question of how can the Information Center provide more value. To finish that sentence, how can the Information Center as a beginning structure for where are you going? We wanted to find, the next section was where are you now? And that was a SWOT assessment. We actually framed it as where are you on the map. So we gave them 3 different assessments to assess their information center, to assess their staff, and to assess the organization. And we discussed the characteristics of successful programs, but we had them then rate themselves. And we used a poll so the whole room could see we did an online poll to see where they came out as a group. And most of them were fairly far along. We then looked at what the roadblocks were. That's the next step in the strategic planning process. What would stop you from getting there? We had them work together in groups on that. And I'm going to give you, if I don't have this, I'm going to show you the SWOT summary. At the very end, we had them use, I got it with me. We had a form for them, a SWOT. It's a SWOT analysis so that they can look at their strengths and weaknesses, and that was the Information Center and their staff, and their threats, which would be the organizational threats, and to brainstorm strategies and tactics. And we worked on the end on a path. What is your path? What's your journey? And each one came up with a specific, which we shared, and they brainstormed on the strategies and tactics, and we shared that in class. And at the end, we brought it back around to where they wanted to go, and they adjusted their concept of what they thought an embedded program would be and what it then would look like in their program. But the big takeaway from this was that they were able to take this back to their organization and create a buy-in, to create a strategic plan that would either allow them to improve their course, their program, or to institute a new one. Okay.
Okay, so now I'd just like to open it up for questions. So, I guess how do you do this? Raise your hands, and if you have it to a specific person, or the group can just answer.
Was there any new technology or anything that's really out there that you saw there that was really exciting?
Or dead.
A lot of people were using Foursquare at the conference. They had a Dow Jones Foursquare check-in site right outside the...
They had a competition, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. They had a competition for checking in, and someone won the competition for that, and they won one of the other Dow Jones, I think, competitions. There were all these, like, the vendors had stuff going on for them.
Yeah, I'll just add that because it's what I was looking for, I was impressed that increasingly analytical capabilities are being built into information resources. And I think the name of the game is less and less being able to retrieve information as a standalone activity and more retrieval and analysis. And the smart vendors are thereby, therefore acquiring the capability to incorporate analytical features in their databases and their various products. And I think we'll see more of that.
I had a question for Dave and Mary. The idea of an embedded librarianship, you explain a little bit about it? Is it working like within a specific group in the organization, or can it be a change in the function of being a librarian in a room and having some other function of the organization accompanied with
Both. It's a change in the relationship with the user group. It's a fundamental switch in the way we normally. It takes from an information professional from inside a library sitting behind a desk and puts them out with the information user. But it also it builds on a relationship. It builds on a relationship. Creates relevancy, so there's specializations, area of specialization in the subject area. Builds on, Dave mentioned what James Kane had said about trust and credibility. Builds on that, and then it builds on creating customized, very specialized products. And Dave might want to add to that.
Yeah, I agree with everything Mary said, and we're continuing to try and articulate what the difference is. Actually, I just read something, and this is even a later post on my blog, if you like. But there's a new book out on embedded librarianship published by the Association of College and Research Libraries. Just came out about 6 weeks ago. And the final essay in that book is from a librarian who was at the Claremont colleges. Right? Bruce knows them. And it uses a definition I had never heard before that the author says is taken from geology. And that is that an embedded element is an integral part to the whole. And I like that. I like that. It's the most succinct thing I've come across that I think expresses some of the meaning. And, there's much more to say. But as, a 5-word definition, I like that.
Yes.
What did they say, if anything, about how to keep up with trends in metadata standards in general and the transition from ACR2 to RDA in particular?
There was a person who was going to speak about that today, but she wasn't able to come. So I don't know if anybody else has any comments. Is that more of an ALA thing than an SLA thing? It's a cataloging, yeah.
There are catalogers at SLA.
There are.
I can't. I was focus on that.
When you go back to the person who asked about the any cutting edge technologies, there was a session called 60 apps. Remember, it used to be 60 sites. Now 60 apps. And you talked about a portal to government apps. So it was fascinating. So it had all the categories like for info pros, business and news, community, lifestyle, and just for fun. It was the most fascinating and most practical. So those slides...
it's on SlideShare.
Right, and I happen to blog that session for governmentinfopro.com. So there's a lot about this SLA conference on governmentinfopro.com and from the ALA conference as well.
Marie Cadell.
Yeah, Marie Cadell.
Was that the round-faced guy with the worst glasses from Purdue?
No, Joe Murphy.
Joe Murphy
from Yale.
Joe Murphy and something Brown, Scott Brown.
Scott Brown. It was a lot of fun. It was really that was another one where the room was like full and out the back. It was really, really good. And it was like really quick. And I'm downloading apps as we went along. Okay. Oh, James, you have something?
Yes, Mary, when you have them do their SWOT analysis, you mentioned the SWT part. Sometimes I find opportunities. What were some of the opportunities, without giving away names or anything, that surfaced?
You know what? If I don't have my notes with me, I'm probably not going to be able to tell you. And I don't... We created afterwards, we captured all of the information in various ways. I thought I brought some of it with me, but I didn't, and we put it up on a website. And right now, I'm just blanking on the opportunities that they talked about. Many of them had already instituted programs. Some of the opportunities, all of them, actually, all but one, had a very supportive organizational structure. And in fact, we were surprised at how far along they were in their organization. And we had people from government, we had people from military, we had people from the private sector. It was quite a broad swath. And that they had a supportive organization, and they felt that they could sell this to their organization, or that they could do a better job. One of the threats that we heard, no one felt that they were very good with relationship building. And actually that was a weakness rather than a threat. But that was a major weakness, and that was a big center of conversation, because we tried to make it more freeform so we could address their specifics. And so it was a relationship building, and we spent a lot of time on that and ways in which to manage up in a way, because some were in a very hierarchical, even though they felt their management was receptive, it was very hierarchical. So how you build those relationships, which I think is questions we all have. There's no map that tells you, well, in a way there is, I guess, on networking, but there isn't one that says this is exactly how you do it. So some of that you have to be very creative in how you build relationships. So those two areas, that opportunity.
Well, that's good. I see a parallel between the embedded librarianship, getting to know your own discipline, getting to know the discipline that you're working with in the embedded relationship. The same deal goes with yourself, and you're developing your own future, and getting the embedded relationship with the knowledge of networking, relationship building, and stuff within that domain. So I see the parallel structure between that on an organizational basis, and then that after you do your SWOT analysis on a personal basis, reinventing your future and so forth.
I guess I would add, and maybe go back to Rick's point a little bit. I think that James Kane and the discussion of how to build trust is really important. Networking is the icebreaker, but trust builds up over time. And Kane, I think, has some interesting insights in what contributes to that development of trust.
Bruce was also an embedded librarian at USAT.
So 6 years at USA Today in the USA Today's Money, News, Sports, Life, and so I was the first embedded librarian they had, and I did that for my final 6 years there, and it was great. Did it save me? No, but it was great doing it, and I enjoyed it. I felt that I did well. I sat in on story meetings every morning with the editors. I feel like I have a lot of on-the-ground knowledge in that. And I think that actually worked very well. It's just that the larger things that are going on within the media meant that they just felt that both traditional library and embedded library positions were no longer things that they could support. When I started with USA Today, a few months after graduating from here in 1987, there were 27 people in the library, and there is no library there anymore. So, but again, this mirrors, they have bigger fish to fry as an organization than the library of USA Today. So it's just, they just got caught up, USA Today Library just got caught up in the wider world of what's happening now in media, which is these just wrenching changes that are going to go on, and they're going to keep going on for a long time.
Yeah, I want to carry on the question I had that on top of his. Is there any about what's fading? Is there anything that you noticed that was missing that isn't being discussed anymore, either technology or trends or pushes because SLA is one of the most innovative groups there is in the profession, and it also makes them cutting edge. but it also means that they test the waters on some things that I may be still swimming in those waters and I want to get out of them. So is there anything that you notice that you know, it's like, oh, they're not doing that anymore? Or, I mean, print is still with us, but I'm not sure how long. What are some of the things that you guys noticed either on the floor or with some of the speakers that were things that you noticed that were missing?
I think one thing that was missing was people. You know, it just shows you what's going on. I don't know if they've announced what the turnout was, but just anecdotally, it was not good. So this has to mirror what's going on in our profession, that you know, if you were here for the 100th anniversary 2 years ago in Washington, there were a lot of people, it was very well attended, and here you are in Philly, not that far away physically, yet what's happened in the intervening 2 years? So just this big, big thing. There's all the things maybe that we're concerned about within the profession. However, if membership is going down, which I assume that it is, I don't have any hard numbers, but certainly there were fewer people, and it is true, people were leaving earlier. Was that because their organization was only paying for them to stay a night or two? I don't know. But they were definitely leaving earlier. So, you again, it's these things where you've got these big overall trends going on in the world. It doesn't necessarily mean the SLA is doing anything wrong or the membership is doing anything wrong, but these bigger things. And maybe some people need to be studying what are these bigger things, and how can I help in some way, or how can groups of us help in some way?
Well, I think this answers one of your questions. I'm one of those people who signed up for SLA and canceled it after we took big budget hits. And I could not, in good conscience, spend the money or take the time when we're pouring over our EBSCO subscriptions and cutting them, and we're debating which databases we're going to cut to come up with this budget cut. But that's why I'm here, to hear what people brought back. And I think our chapter has done a very good job of trying to put articles in the newsletter, as Chris has done, and having a forum where we can tap into what people brought back, what excited them, and all that. I think that's really, you know, how we're dealing with those changes, at least.
You know, Jennifer, I think my overall impression was I heard a lot about the need to be innovative. These are really broad trends, but the need to be innovative and to innovate. And how do you do that? The need to reframe our skills. I think there was a lot of talk about that, reframing skills, repositioning ourselves, and redefining ourselves. So I made those might just have been the what I chose to hear to go to. But I think even with what Thomas Friedman was saying, it was echoed throughout that whole conference.
Well, one of the things that Dave was talking about when I saw him at SLA was that in library school, you were saying that a lot of people come into library school for the archival part of the cultural heritage. But SLA and the future of the field isn't going that way as a preservation, but as an integrated part of the innovation of a company.
Where special collection that they want to make available to everyone.
Right, or making, being a part of the forward-looking part of the company instead of, the record management or that other part of archiving part. I mean, is that where the profession is going, or is that just the feeling that instead of panicking about the economy, that we're looking to say, okay, we're not going to look at this as a challenge, but as an opportunity?
Can I jump in here? Guy St. Clair, who we mentioned before, former president of SLA, wrote the history of SLA, ex-adjunct here. I went to his presentation, and one of the things I asked after his, in the Q&A was, how do we get more people to attempt Guy St. Clair type careers? Not saying, okay, I'm going to do exactly what Guy St. Clair did, but this very intentional career. He's reinvented himself like 2-3 times over a period of years. He's very well known and really gets himself out there. And one of the things he said is that it is very intentional, it's very hard work, and it takes a lot of time to do it. So, on the one hand, we need people like that who are going to be very active both in their day-to-day work, but they're also going to be active in SLA and other organizations. But realizing that in order to do that and do quality work, it is time-consuming, and you really have to think about it. And you have to go about it in some sort of a planned way. And how many people are going to be really, hopefully lots of people. But I think it needed to be said, and it just as I'm listening to him talk, I figure, here's the perfect thing. He had a lot of people at his talk. Here's the perfect thing to ask this guy. How can the people in that audience learn more about to have this kind of very intentional career built over it takes time, built over a long period of time. So people now just going into the profession, it's a great thing to just think about as you're doing it. So you're not 10 years into it and thinking, gee, well, maybe I'd like to contribute to SLA, or maybe I'd like to do something else, whatever. That to think about it, build it in right away.
Yeah, and I think SLA is trying very hard to help us reposition ourselves and get us to reposition ourselves, and to hear this, that we have to begin to define our positions. I really recommend Tom Friedman's article, his editorial in the New York Times today. I think it echoes just exactly what Dave was saying in his talk at SLA, and I think he's right on the money for us as well.
Was there any new formats? I didn't get to SLA, obviously, that's why I'm here, but I went to ACRL, which was in Philly just maybe a month before that. And one of the things that they did there, which was new and exciting to me, is they had scheduled sessions. They announced them in the schedule, and when you went there were actually big round tables that were in this room, and they had a theme on each table, and you picked the table, and you went there, and you could it was human to human, just like us asking you and getting. Did SLA do anything like that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I was going to say, unconferences were big. Unconferences were, I think, introduced a couple of years ago by our own Karen Huffman, if
and
I'm not mistaken.
She's been running them at the...
And they have really spread. And I did not go to any personally, but my wife, who's a law librarian, went to an unconference of the legal division and got into a discussion with some kindred spirits about the way that they're being treated by vendors and some of the licensing issues, and found it to be a very valuable experience. So I think unconferences seem to be really catching fire.
Right, and I did a program with Karen Huffman on conferences, how to do one. So I think and we also we've had knowledge cafes where we also move tables. So I think SLA's been at the forefront.
And DCSLA did the speed mentoring.
Right, and we've done knowledge cafe formats.
Sorry, another question. Something that I observed there, I didn't go prepared for this, but because of all the electronic stuff, netbooks and Androids and whatever, there were sessions that were online only. And if you didn't come with some means to join that group, you were just, it's kind of like they were having a meeting in a foreign country and you didn't know that language. And there was no advance announcement to me, that was really, is SLA, is it doing that same format too? I mean, seriously, they had huge areas outside with electrical outlets all over the place, and people were sitting in those chairs. They didn't even go into meetings.
Maybe that was informal. Was it something like that?
No. This wasn't informal. There were definitely in the schedule. There were things online that I couldn't participate in because I didn't have a computer with me.
There are ways for people to virtually participate in real sessions if you're one of the virtual conference attendees. But as far as I know, there wasn't any material that was sponsored by SLA that was only online that people physically there couldn't access as well.
Right. And they do have the virtual conference for SLA. Unfortunately, it's separate registration from the in-person registration, which is different then like ALA, it's combined in one. And I know ACRL also had a virtual conference that they had the highest numbers at this past year.
Last question.
It's not a question. It's just
a statement.
In the age of multitasking and stuff like that, doing many things at one time, it's actually possible to attend and participate in several meetings at one time through Twittering and stuff like that. So you have, I've been in situations where we're just in our own meeting, but we're tweeting our own observations, and you're getting incoming and outgoing, and then cross-pollination is really interesting. But it is possible to multitask, be in more than one place at one time, but you have to stay grounded.
Well, yeah, in the networking session, they said, you have to also take time for yourself in this during conferences and recharge, refresh, and process everything that you're learning, because it can be information overload.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all the presenters here today, and also I want to bring the students up one more time to thank them. That we didn't get to meet everybody. Come on up, introduce yourselves, say hello. Yay! Go ahead and introduce yourselves, since we didn't get to.
Hi, I'm Lisa Campbell. I'm one of the vice presidents for CUA's SLA group. Angela Flatovich, also vice president. You already met me.
Yeah. So, thank you so much, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you for listening to DCSLA Radio. For more information about our events, please visit our website at dc.sla.org.